So read between the lines. There's been sort of conflicting reports about is there a season 2, is there not a season 2? So what's the status of the show?
We shot a season 2, but I at this point I don't think that season 2 is going to air. So I think we are semi-officially not coming back.
And why won't it air, do you think?
Don't know.
Yeah.
You know, I guess at this point it doesn't fit in BET's programming schedule. You know, which is kind of it was kind of a disappointment. Because again, with all of my work, I'm constantly looking to again what I always do, push the boundaries of how people of color are seen. So that felt like the perfect show to satisfy an audience that is also looking for the same thing. I'm just not sure if with all the players involved, if we were really able to execute the show the way in its most ideal way.
Now, season 2 did not have Tracy.
No.
Yeah.
No. Tracy ended up booking another job. And it was at a time where BET wasn't even sure if we were going to have a second season. So she got an opportunity. She got a really good opportunity to do something else. And then, BET decided they wanted to continue the show, more centered around me, which was great because the show became about this guy who thought he had the perfect marriage, perfect family, perfect marriage, all of a sudden finding himself a single dad, and dealing with the complexities of that, of having to accept that your marriage was not what you thought it was, and in telling people what the second season was going to be about and explaining that, I was really surprised at how many people, how many men, said, "Man, I can't wait to see that because that's my story." Men who have been, married for years, and for one reason or another, the wife, decides she needs to, kind of move on and live her own life, and the man is actually stuck there with, not stuck, but the man is there taking care of the kids. Was very surprised at how many stories, how many people had that story.
Yeah. And then in 2011, you did several episodes of Community. Talk about that experience.
Community is a blast. Everybody on that show is funny, and everybody is just as funny off camera as they are on camera. The on-camera dynamic is almost the same off-camera dynamic in terms of the people who are close on camera are close off camera, but everybody really comes there to have a good time. It's a lot of work. That show is really a lot of work, but everyone there just has such a good time with each other that you get there and it's infectious. I mean, they're very welcoming, and you come in and you fall right in.
Talk about the character you played on the show.
Andre, interestingly enough, while on my own show, I was playing this ideal husband. Andre was very much the less than ideal husband, and actually, that show, I honestly have to give Yvette Nicole Brown all of the credit in the world, because she was very specific that she wanted me to play her ex-husband, her no good ex-husband, and the irony of that is Yvette and Sherry Shepard are really good friends. So when they decided they were going to recast for Sherry's ex-husband, Yvette was the one who suggested me to Sherry. So I don't know why, but for some reason, Yvette sees me as a dirty, no good husband. I don't know what she has against me, but here is the the second gig and second no good ex-husband I owe to Yvette. But it's really it's a fun role to play. It's a funny role to play. But he's a guy who loves women, and he tries his hardest, but he's got a bit of a Rolling Stone in him, and I love Yvette so much, and we have such a great time. Just on our downtime when we're shooting, we're always off in the corner in some kind of debate about whether it's religion, spirituality, men and women dynamic. We go in, and we're always she's always picking my brain, I'm always picking her brain, or I'm always trying to say something to rile her up. But we have a really cool on camera and off camera relationship.
So we've obviously skipped many, many of your credits. Is there anything that we didn't talk about that you would like to mention?
Not that I can think of off the top of my head.
Got the big broad strokes.
Yeah.
What are your current projects?
Right now, I'm working diligently to finish this third CD for my band, Miles Long. One of the beauties of being an independent artist is not having a record company deadline looming over me, which gives me a great amount of freedom to be an artist. The bad part is not having a record company deadline looming over me, because it's taking forever to finish this record. But I'm adamant about I'm determined rather to finish the record this year so I can put it out at the beginning of next year. And I will be spending this fall in D.C. at the Arena Theater doing the stage production of Guess Who's Coming to Dinner. And I'm really excited about that, because theater is, I start out in theater, and every couple of years I go back to theater, and to be able to, one, be at the Arena stage, because it's such a great theater, but to be doing this play, and having an opportunity to play a role that Sidney Poitier played that's not a Raisin in the Sun. I'm really looking forward to this piece, because it's still very relevant, and it's I had forgotten how much wit and humor is in this story, and I think the challenge is going to be when you watch the movie, and again, you talk about nuanced performances from everybody. The challenge is going to be, well, how do you bring that nuance to the stage where everything is big and has to be big, so you can play to the house. So I'm going to be interested in how we find how to make that work.
So how do you think TV has changed since you've started in the business?
Well, when I started out in television 40 years ago, at the time there were, your major networks. You had CBS, NBC, ABC. I mean, was Fox even out yet? I think Fox might have,
Just started.
Just started. The WB had just started. UPN had just started. and cable wasn't as as huge as it is now. Whereas now with cable there are so many choices and so much programming that network television isn't the mainstay or the go-to that it used to be. So that definitely has an impact on ratings. The whatever the highest rated show today is, whatever numbers they're doing are only a fraction of the numbers that Cosby did. Like, you'll never get Cosby or Seinfeld numbers or Friends numbers ever again. It's not going to happen because the playing field is so broad and there's so much content. One of the beauties of one of the experiences of the Cosby Show was everybody, you had to get home Thursday night at 8:00 to watch the show. I mean, families structured their week around getting together to watch the Cosby Show at 8:00 on Thursday. We were just figuring out how to work our VCR so we could tape it. Whereas now we got DVRs, and you don't have to be in front of the television at a particular time. So I think that kind of takes away from the experience that television used to be. And then there's reality television, which has really changed the financial face of television. Instead of spending money on one show, you can take that same budget, go produce 4 reality shows, throw them up against the wall, and see which one sticks. And there's a deluge of reality shows on television. Many of them not necessarily great, but the ones that hit big, and the investment and the return on having a hit reality show is so great that people don't mind spending money and just cranking out these reality shows and seeing which one sticks. And I think that has a lot to do with the way the viewing audience perceives television and programming now, because now you watch so much reality television that when you watch television with actual actors, they almost seem like they're overacting because you're so used to watching non-actors on television. So I think that's had an impact on actors' work. So I think all of that has just changed, the experience of what television was. Now we're looking at cable to watch the more interesting envelope-pushing shows.
How do you think the portrayal of Black Americans has changed on TV since you started?
I think, on one hand, post Cosby, a lot of this stereotypical characters have just been rehashed. Just because you dress black characters up and give them a profession doesn't necessarily mean that you're doing anything different if you still have the execution the same. But there's an audience for everybody, and I think there's always been a problem with the black culture being fully represented. We don't really have the balance that we have in mainstream programming. So that's something that's still, very much lacking. Will we ever have a Cosby Show again? I don't know. I don't think so. One of the things that we found interesting about Read Between the Lines is, the show wasn't really groundbreaking as we were thinking it was going to be, because the reality of it is, the world has grown up on the Cosby Show. So seeing that kind of family is no longer groundbreaking. The first family is African American. So when you have a show where you may have, you really do the work to make the characters not your stereotypical, black characters, that can't just be the crux of what the show is about, because we've been there, done that. So I think there's definitely so much room for more diversity just within, the black culture. When you watch black programming, you know, the characters are, all still kind of in the same, on the same plane, So it'd be nice to have more diversity.
What would your fans be surprised to know about you?
That at 43 years old, I'm still working through a process of owning myself, owning owning who I am. There are still, even if having been in this business for as long as I have been and living in the public eye for as long as I have been and being centered and grounded, there's still a list of insecurities that I have. I'm still on this path of even my own authenticity. Not that I walk around being inauthentic. I think we all have moments of authenticity and then, longer moments of inauthenticity. But, there's a voice, there's my voice that I'm still trying to find. Growing up as a little boy and always wanting to be a good boy. And, I would, the reward for doing things, would be my mother telling me, I'm a good boy. You grow up and, people see you as a role model in society and people praise you for having your head on straight and, being a good guy. There is some kind of, it's an older version of being a good boy. And in my 20s, my life was, kind of the 20s version of looking to be told I'm a good boy. And I'm, and I think that's had an impact on the way that I carry myself, the way I interact with people. Again, very genuine. I'm very genuine, but there's still a voice that's trying to find itself and trying to to express itself. The poetry helps a lot. I do a lot of writing to try to get that out. But India Irie is a really close friend of mine, and we had a conversation one time about her trying to find her authenticity. I'm like, wait, what are you talking? You're India Irie. Your whole career, all of your music is based on honesty and being authentic. She said, no, it's different. She said it's genuine, but there's an authenticity that I'm trying to find. And at the time, I didn't get it, and it took me a couple of years to get it. Like I know, I get that search. So long answer to your question. I think people would probably be surprised that I'm still on the search of finding myself.
What do people say to you when they see you on the street?
I get all kinds of stuff. Is that a Gordon Gartrell? People always like to tell me what their favorite episode is. People, like to share the impact that Cosby has had on them. people, you know, always tell me that they're proud of me for, not losing my mind, not being in the tabloids. Get a host of stuff, and I think probably even when I look back at my career and look at my body of work, I know I don't suck, but I look at my body of work and I see so much room to grow, and there's a certain place that I'm really trying to access as an artist, that I haven't gotten yet. So there's still a part of me that feels like, wow, if people like, my work and like, what I've done and what I do, I can't wait for them to see, the artist I am when I actually access, that thing I'm going for. Like, that's exciting because I feel like, okay, I can do away with the maniacal obsession of will I ever work again. I know I'm always going to work. I used to say, even at the height of Cosby, when people would ask me, how does it feel to be successful? And I would always say, well, I don't feel like I'm successful. The show is successful. But for me, it won't be until I'm 40, 50, 60 years old, still working consistently as an actor, that I can look back on my career and say, I've had a successful career. So even in my 40s, I think I'm definitely proud of the success of having a post-Cosby life, a post-Cosby career, being able to, have worked consistently for the 20-odd years, since Cosby has been off the air, even though, some of those stretches of not working may be a little longer than what I'd like for them to be. But, I know that, I'm good. I'm always going to work. So now it's about, this time that I have left on this earth as an artist is finding my voice and accessing, cultivating that thing that I have inside of me, that once I uncover that, I think as an artist I will be so incredibly fulfilled. And I think the people who like what I do now will be so pleasantly surprised that there's so much more underneath that.
That's great. You've talked a lot about the upside of fame, and you're clearly a grateful person for that. But what are some of the pitfalls of fame?
One of my favorite Jay-Z lines is, "Fame is the worst drug known to man." When you can look at yourself in the mirror and not see what you've become. This is a horrible business to be in. It's a soul-destroying business. And it's, in some cases, it's devastating to watch people get into this business and so quickly compromise their soul for a few minutes of fame. And I guess it's something that you just really can't understand unless you're in it. I think I've been very fortunate to have, reached a level of, fame, popularity, what have you, at such an early age. So I never grew up chasing that. So when I see people who are chasing it and willing to, give up everything and sell their souls and put their integrity on the line just to get a taste of that fame, You see it. You see it ruin people, and it ruins people's lives. Uh, when you when you live the kind of life where everyone is at your beck and call, and everyone is trying to please you, and you know, make you feel, like you're the greatest in the world because that's their job. It's so difficult not to get caught up in that. And I think it takes really extraordinary people to not fall into that. Or actually, I'm sorry, to recognize when they're falling into it, because it's impossible not to fall into the trap. So, but to be aware enough to recognize that you're falling into it and gain perspective. And it takes a tremendous amount of work to remain that present, to recognize when you're starting to slip, because it's so easy. And people I always say that the in this business, the best thing that can happen to you is also the worst thing that can happen to you, and that's that you become famous. Because you do so much work to get there, but then the real work is maintaining it. At 15, I knew that all these years of being, I guess it must have been 18, all these years of being on a number one show doesn't mean anything if I'm not working consistently at 40, 50, 60 years old. And people, it's so easy to get so caught up in what's happening now and not think about where do I want to be 20, 30, 40 years from now. You have to really look at the trajectory of a career. It's not just about a job and getting this level of fame. It's like, well, how do you, maintain, not so much maintain the fame, but how do you maintain a standard of living and keeping your sanity? It's not easy, man. And when you try to explain it to people, more often than not, they don't get it, and then it's just it becomes the individual journey. But I'm so blessed to have the kind of parents that I have. My mother and my father. So blessed to have been exposed to Mr. Cosby, and I guess really, have my being exposed to him for more than half of my life, because even now we have such a great relationship, and he is so much in my corner and still a mentor and still encouraging and supportive and still a teacher. So I've been fortunate to have really great people on my journey, and that really makes a difference. And if you're a kid, the most important thing is having a parent who really gets it.
Yeah. What's your proudest achievement?
I'd say my proudest achievement is being able to have a post-Cosby life and a post-Cosby career and still have my head on as straight as possible. And I've had such an awesome life. I'm literally, I've got my ups and downs and all of that. But like, if I die tomorrow, I know I would go with a smile on my face. I know I haven't wronged anybody. I haven't wronged anybody to get ahead, and and people that I may have hurt or wronged unintentionally, I've had the opportunity to, own up to those things and, be responsible for my part, and, I have peace of mind. And for me, you can't put a price on that. And I can definitely say that I feel successful in, my post-Cosby life and having a peace of mind.
What's your biggest regret?
I'd say, again, one of my biggest successes, I guess, is not having any regrets. I really don't. I really don't. I mean, I understand the journey. I'm in a place where I really I'm really conscious of taking every moment and receiving every event in my life as a gift, as an opportunity to enjoy life fully. And whether I, in the moment deem an event as good or bad, I recognize that, it's a gift and it's an opportunity to live life, whatever that brings up, whatever emotions that, it sparks. It is an opportunity for me to be present and, though I don't have control over things that happen, I have control over my response to them. And, the older I get, the more of a kick I get out of those opportunities to be very conscious of how I'm going to respond, different from how I may want to respond in the moment. It's a nice place to be when you have that kind of control and awareness. But yeah, I can say I don't really have any regrets. There may be some things I would have liked to have gone a different way, but I don't have any regrets. I really figured I would be I figured I'd have a bona fide strong film career by now. But the beauty is I have so many more miles on my journey that, that possibility is still there. If I really, really want it. But I love TV. I love being able to work and still have a life.
What advice do you have for an aspiring actor?
Don't do it. Keep your day job. Keep your soul. And understand that at some point in your career, or even if it's not a career yet, at some point in your life, you are going to come to a crossroads, and you are going to be forced to ask yourself, if I never become rich or famous, do I get enough joy out of this craft that if I stay at the same financial level I am for the rest of my life, do I have the passion and dedication to this craft, and does it give me enough joy to sustain me? And you have to be really honest with your answer. And if the answer is no, that's fine. Just understand it and move on. Find something that will sustain you. And if the answer is yes, then hold on and enjoy the freaking ride. Because it's a ride, The thing is, there's this concept that, that we have, oh man, when I get to a certain point, I get to chill out and just kind of, relax and take it easy. There's never that. I remember reading in Esquire magazine, it was when Tom Cruise was promoting Minority Report. And the article opened up with, how stressed Tom Cruise is. And you were like, the hell does Tom Cruise have to be stressed about? And the article talked about how every movie that he comes out with has the pressure of either bringing him back from his last box office flop or doing better than his last box office hit. And then you realize Tom Cruise, Will Smith, these guys are still on the grind. They're still on the hustle. So no matter what, what level you're on, what rung you're on in terms of this business, the hustle never stops. And that's real. You have to really love this, you have to love the business. You have to love, not so much love the business, but you have to love the craft. And you have to love the craft enough to, be in the business of show. But the idea of I'm gonna get to a certain place and then I'll be able to chill doesn't happen. Unless you've been working long enough, and I would like to think that De Niro and Pacino, they work because they want to, not because they have to. But then even in that, I want to work, but finding something that's worthy, for me to do, or something that I love enough to want to do. I mean, that's what I would imagine, where De Niro and Pacino and those guys are. What do they find, that excites them to want to work? And sometimes, you see, some Robert De Niro movies, and people are like, why the hell did he do that? You go, probably because it's something he wanted to do. And, he looked at it and it seemed like something he would have, fun doing. Robert De Niro doesn't need any more hit movies in his career. But I would imagine just finding something to do that you want to do. You want to put the hours in. I'm sure that's, that has its own journey and its own hustle.
Where do you see yourself in 10 years?
The fact that you asked me that is now going to make me really contemplate that when I go home. I've never been good at a 5-year plan or a 10-year plan. I've always, had a vision of what I wanted to do and just kind of went for it. And, I'm at a place in life where, I've really achieved, most of the goals that I set for myself. And in my 40s, I feel like when I look at the space ahead of me, I see this blank canvas, and I have the opportunity to create what I want the next chapter of my life to look like. And I'm still undecided as to what I want that to look like. So part of my, work now is, taking time and, meditating and envisioning and being quiet enough to really hear what my soul wants, so I can then go about creating what I want the rest of my life to be. Because I know that my life has been a testament to having the power to manifest what I want. My block now is just figuring out what I want. Once I figure it out, I'm off and running, and the universe will be right there with me, laying it out.
Excellent. Well, we can't thank you enough for your time today.
Cool.
Wonderful.
No worries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for asking me to be, to be part of the archive.
Our pleasure.